Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to start a new reading vlog that I am super excited about. We're going to start the first vlog for one of the authors I wanted to try this year. I made a list with 5 authors to try in 2025, and the first one we will look at is Tananarive Due. I want to read The Good House. This book has been published in 2003, so it is already a little bit older, and it has been on my wish list for way too long. And so yeah, I'm very excited to give this a try. Do I know what this is about? Absolutely not, but this is giving haunted house vibes, and I am a lover of a good haunted house story, and so I thought this would be the perfect place to start reading this author. I also think that Tananarive Due can become a new favorite author for me, so I definitely am very hopeful that this will be 5 stars. And the way this works is that I will update you when I'm 25% through the book, when I'm halfway through, when I'm 3/4 of the way through, and then when I have finished the book. This will also be spoiler free, but perhaps I will talk about some spoilers right at the end of the video. But if I do, I will let you know. So it's time to start this, and we'll talk again when I have read the first 25%. And I can tell you a little bit more of what this is actually about. So I'm now finally 25% into The Good House, which is right here. Why I'm not holding it up, I don't know. I'm 25% into The Good House, and I'm here to give you a quick update. I won't be holding this up the whole time. This is a heavy book, like for real though, this is a heavy book. But we managed to get 25% into it, and so I want to give you a first little update, talk a little bit of what this book is about. Now, in this one, we do have a prologue where I think we're in the 1920s, and there has happened kind of a tragedy in this small town where there was like a mudslide or whatever you call that, and basically a whole street has been destroyed apart from like one house, and that is the Good House, and it is named after the man who built it, Elijah Good. And now the woman who lives there is a black woman, basically the only black woman in this town, and she has inherited the house from Elijah Good. She's also a nurse, and she lives with a Native American man who is called Red John in this town, and he also seems to be like the only like indigenous person in this town, to be sure. So we have this like situation in the prologue, and we see that the white townspeople come to her looking for her help because a girl is kind of sick, but it doesn't seem to be like a natural sickness. And then we switch to the early 2000s, where we are following the granddaughter of that woman who lived in the Good House, and she is a grown woman. She has an ex-husband and a son, and the son lives with his father, but then he spends the summers with his mom, and they usually go to this small town and spend the summer in the Good House. And this is what they had planned for this summer, but then suddenly the ex-husband kind of showed up too, and he our main character doesn't really know what he wants, like if he wants to rekindle their relationship or whatever it is. And this is like very nostalgic, like 2000s feeling. I really enjoy that in a way. There usually is like a lot of like problematic shit going on in like any kind of media from that time, but with this one, I'm just really enjoying the nostalgia that it brings. And the first chapter of this book is so intense. Like, you know, something is going to be terribly wrong at the end of the chapter. And basically, in this first chapter, we follow them as they're preparing for a 4th of July party. And we know that the party is going to go wrong. And so, yeah, that first chapter, it was so intense. And I don't want to say more about the plot because everything else would kind of spoil it. So I try to be more vague about the rest that is going on in this first quarter of the book. Our main character is then a kind of like a manager for famous people. So that's also something I really enjoy. Like, I love reading about actresses and stuff like that. So we do have an element of that in the story as well. And I also want to say content warning for like horrible things that happen to pets in horror novels. So I wanted to mention that. So far, I am absolutely loving this book. I think it is very intense. The way that it combines like the family situation of our main character with the horror elements of the book. And because of what happens in this first like prologue chapter, we can already guess a little bit what might be going on. But obviously our main character has no idea. Like, she's just starting to realize that something more might be wrong with the good house, and she has grown up there. So for her, this really is a good house, and she believed that kind of the spirit of her grandmother was still there and protecting her, and that's why she brought her son back there all of these summers. It is like very intriguing. I love the tone. I love the main character. And now the last chapter I have read is actually told from the son's point of view, which I thought was very interesting because that also brings in kind of like this element of like hip hop and rap in the like 90s and early 2000s. So if you're into kind of that, maybe that's interesting as well. Like, I'm not, I have no idea about all of that stuff, but I just loved the way that this was integrated into the narrative as well, because like I can imagine that for a Black teenager during that time, this was like a very important topic to them. And again, this feeds into also this nostalgia feeling of like the culture and the music we had in the like early 2000s. So yeah, I'm having a very good time with this book so far. I am very intrigued to see like more of the like horrible stuff going on. We do not always follow our main character in every chapter, so we have seen some like creepy stuff happening through eyes of other characters already. And yeah, I think this book just builds up the tension so much. And like this first chapter is like very long, and after it finished I had to put the book down. Like, I was so like overwhelmed by what was going on just in that first chapter that I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put it like to the side for now, and I'm going to go back to it when I have calmed down. So yeah, definitely recommend. Really enjoying it so far. Let's see how the next quarter goes. So I'm now halfway through The Good House, and so it's time for the next update. And I do want to try to keep this one short, but like you guys, there's a lot going on in this book. Now, the second quarter does feel a little bit different from the first one. The first one definitely had that like very nostalgic, almost cozy feeling because we're in this small town, we're following our main character, and even though like very terrible stuff is happening, it still had this like kind of coziness. Now, the second quarter has all the content warnings. We do get more POVs in this one, so while the main character still stays the main character, definitely, we do have chapters from other POVs, and those are very disturbing to say the least. Like, especially we get chapters from Tariq's point of view, which is her ex-husband. And those are so creepy and disgusting. And yeah, I'm like very intrigued to see where that goes, because like right now at the halfway point of the book, it feels like so much shit is going down already. Like, how is this going to escalate even more in the second half of the book? So yeah, there's just a lot going on. We also have a tiny little bit of a romance in this one. And I do like this one. It is kind of like a second chance romance with like a high school crush situation. And I think that that works quite well for me personally. I'm not the biggest fan of like second chance romance, but because like these characters have matured so much and they're like real adults, and like the high school has been many, many years ago, I think it still works. And we definitely have this sense of like these two characters kind of being like right for each other, even though the time definitely is not right. Like, if you're reading this book, like, this is not a setting where you're like, time for romance. However, I do like the way this is dealing with it, and definitely also showing the complexities of being an adult, and that even though you might like someone a lot, sometimes things just are not the right time, or they're just not like working out in that moment. So far I'm really loving that little subplot, and it's really like a very tiny subplot, so do not go into this book reading it for the romance. Now, the like scary stuff that is happening, like from the prologue, we know it is kind of like a demonish situation. We do have some kind of like possession that is going on. So I'm very intrigued to see how that will progress and how certain things will be explained from that standpoint. Our characters definitely have to learn a lot more. Like, I feel like we know so much more than the characters, especially Angela, our main character. So they have to catch up a lot. And I'm intrigued to see how that will happen. I also love that this book kind of plays with horror tropes, especially with the kind of like haunted house trope, even though this is not really like a haunted house anymore. But I like that it like plays around with that, and it's not falling into the tropes of that. It is very much like its own story. I wouldn't say it is like a traditional haunted house story. It's also not a traditional possession story right now. So I think that is very fun, because it could go into like so many directions right now, and I'm very intrigued to see which direction it takes in the end. This also probably builds on like real mythology. I'm not quite sure about that. I don't want to Google the term that is used for this like demony thing just yet, because I don't want to spoil myself at all, because I'm not familiar with the term. So yeah, I will definitely give that a Google once I'm finished with the book and I know what happens and how they might deal with it in the end. But for now, I'm just going along with it, and I'm having a grand old time. Like, this is so disturbing, but it's like you have to keep reading. You want to know what's happening, and that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I'm going to hunker down with this book and try to make my way through the third quarter. So I will hopefully update you tomorrow how that went. So I'm now 3/4 of the way into The Good House, and wow, like, this book is a lot. Now, to be completely honest, I just recorded my update and I did not hit record. So I'm trying to repeat myself now, and it might seem a little bit weird, but we're going for it. Yeah, I was saying like very profound things about this book, you better believe me. But yeah, I think one of the first things I said is that this book is kind of what I want Stephen King novels to be like, and they usually don't live up to my expectation. The only like Stephen King book I liked was It, and so this one kind of reminds me of that, while it is like completely different. But I think if you enjoy that, you will enjoy this book as well. Now, I was talking about how in this one we do have also a reference that is the like Hi Ho Silver reference that obviously is a reference to like a Western, but it is also in it, and it's in here. So that kind of like made some connections in my brain for that. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. This is like gearing up to be very explosive in the end, and I'm very intrigued to see that. I do think that like we do get like a ton of other perspectives again in this third quarter, and we do go back a little bit to the historical time point with Marie, the grandmother of our main character, and we see a little bit more of her like magic, like what's going on. We also see a little bit more of the family history, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed getting that context to like understand what is going on. Is like very good. And also we learn a little bit more about the son of the main character and what's going on with him. So I think that is like very important to give us as the reader the well-rounded picture of what's going on, while it doesn't feel like I'm just waiting for the main character to catch up and to also learn all of these things, because I don't think that the main character really needs to know these things to do what she has to do in the end. So that's something I'm definitely enjoying, that we get it fleshed out so much, and it doesn't feel like now we like know so much more than the main character does. So I'm having such a good time with this book. But this is definitely a horror novel, and it is very dark. You definitely should look up content warnings if you are not like willing to go into like a horror and like everything that comes with it. There is like terrible things happening, and while I think it is not quite as bad with like some of the problems of it, it does have some like things that kind of remind me of that as well. So it's like it was written in the early 2000s or like in the late 90s. So keep that in mind. It definitely has some of these things. It has terms we wouldn't use anymore. Some of these are used by characters that are portrayed as like very backwards. However, they're still used. I was talking about the romance a little bit as well. Now, this has developed now a little bit further, the subplot with the romance, and there were some things that I didn't like, and while I can see that they are kind of like realistic, they still felt kind of like icky to me. So I'm still not sure how I feel about that. I just wanted to mention it because I talked about how I liked the way the romance was done, and now it's going into a direction a little bit that I don't necessarily love, or that just felt a bit icky. But I don't want to bore you with all of that. I definitely want to go back to reading the last quarter and get into this like finale, because I'm sure it's going to be epic. I'm having the best time reading this book. I hope you pick it up if you're interested in horror books, and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, so yesterday I finished reading The Good House by Tananarive Due, and I'm here to give you the final update of my thoughts on this book. Now, I already talked a ton about this one, so I'm trying not to like repeat all of the stuff I've already said. I'm standing by the fact that this is very reminiscent of King. It had some more like references to that as well in the last quarter of the book, and then also it just has like a lot of the same like feels, but also some of the same like issues that I have with like King horror stories. So I gave this one 4.5 stars in the end. It wasn't quite a 5-star because I actually didn't love the ending, unfortunately. I think that it was a good ending, a solid ending. For me personally, it was like wrapped up with a bow a little bit too much, to be honest, because I like it when in horror books the characters have to pay an actual price. And I don't feel like that was really the case here, without like spoiling too much. But I think that a lot of the like shock and horror is kind of taken out of the story at the end. So while I did enjoy what this said about family and about like parent-child relationships and how complicated they can be when you're a teenager, but that it is always worth like trying. I didn't like what that did to the horror plotline of this book. But yeah, I feel like I shouldn't really say much more because then I would like spoil stuff. One thing that like really bothered me with this last quarter is that the violence that is portrayed in here as the like horror element is very like sexualized violence, and so I didn't love that. Like, it's not something that I enjoy reading about. And I feel like, you know, this book is like almost 25 years old. So we have reached a point where an antagonist doesn't need to threaten people to be sexually violent towards them for us to know that that is like a really evil guy. You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't love that, unfortunately. I'm just gonna put the book down now because this book is heavy. So unfortunately, the ending, like, it didn't reach quite that 5-star that I wanted it to be, but I will definitely pick up the Reformatory next because with that one I have like very strong 5-star feelings as well, and that is a recent release by Tananarive Due, and so I hope that it doesn't suffer quite from the same issues that I had with this one. What I did really love about this story is how it incorporated this idea of voodoo, and it definitely doesn't go down the very stereotypical route of portraying it, but it tries to be much more respectful towards it. It tries to show like the love for the ancestors and for your family and where you're coming from, and how that also can connect you to the people that are currently in your family and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that part of the story, and I also really like the like historical storyline, even though still I am confused with that one because I feel like there is like something like very traumatic that the grandmother of our main character did, and I don't think we actually really ever know why she does it, or I just haven't understood it correctly. But like, I'm still confused on that part. I don't know, might have been my mistake as well. So overall, would definitely say if you're interested in this book, if you like horror books, like Stephen King horror books, then you should definitely check this one out. I think it is very, very good. It has some shocking moments, it has some heartbreaking moments. It deals with a lot. Like, I always enjoy when horror novels deal with grief and losing people that you love. And so this was like very interesting, and I think while it could have built on the history of what happened to the main character's grandmother a little bit more and have that fleshed out a little bit more for us to like really see the devastation, then yeah, I think that this could have been like perfect, but it didn't quite hit it. I think that's where I will leave it off for the spoiler-free part. So if you haven't read this book, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're now interested in it and you are choosing to pick it up soon. I have been sleeping on this one for many years, so don't do the same mistake. But if you have read the book or you're not planning on reading it anytime soon and you don't care about spoilers, I want to talk about a couple of things a little bit more in detail for this next part. So spoilers ahead, be warned. Now, let's start with the ending. As I said, I didn't really love how sexualized the violence threats were towards the ending. We do have the Baka taking over Tariq, and Tariq is a character that I didn't like from the beginning, and that is very much on purpose, because when we get introduced to him, we do kind of see him as a threat first, and then we learn that he is the husband of the main character. But the way that she reacts to him in this first scene is not the way you react towards your husband. So we already know that there is something like deeply wrong, and that gets like portrayed again and again throughout the book, and as the Baka takes him over, it just gets like amplified even more. So the idea of like him being like a sexual predator towards our main character in the end, it just felt so icky, and I just don't love it. And I think it could have been done differently without it being like so icky, especially as like Marie says, like in the end, that he has fought the baka for like 2 years and that he was like so strong to resist it. And that also didn't make a lot of sense. It felt like it was put in there so it wouldn't seem like black men are sexual predators or anything like that. But I just felt like it didn't really match up with his character, because we know that he has like given into drugs, he had given into like his violent thoughts and all of that even before like the baka took him over. He was like in his head a very violent man, and he was brought up to be that. So yeah, I had a little bit of a struggle with his character in that sense. But so yeah, I didn't really love the ending. I did love the way that when Angela finally travels back into like her life before all of it started, she doesn't remember anything that has happened, but she does have these like feelings inside of her that kind of guide her. And so she's like, yeah, this relationship with Tariq is definitely over. So I did enjoy that this is made like very clear that even though it would be good for her son to have his parents being like a married couple again, that is not what is good for her. I feel like the whole like Corey storyline also had this like really weird like sexual edge to it, and it like portrays like a teenage boy in a way. So I have never been a teenage boy. I can't really speak to how accurate that is, that everything is kind of about sex at one point in your life. So maybe it is like accurate. But especially the moment when Becca comes out of the woods and claims that she has been sexually assaulted by this Bo dude, that was a moment that I just really didn't like, and I wish it would have been different. Like, obviously, Becca is just the lure. It is what is supposed to get Corey to mess up the ritual and stuff like that. So she does have this like a dramatic entrance and all of that, but just this whole scene didn't sit right with me, to be honest. And the way that Corey immediately made it about him, I mean, he's a teenager, okay, but he immediately made it about him and himself, and how something that he considers his has been touched by another boy, and so he doesn't really think about like comforting her or taking care of her. He immediately thinks about like hurting the person who did that, which I guess is a very prevalent theme, but it's not what you're supposed to do. It's just not. And so yeah, to all the men who are probably not watching this, if this ever happened, take care of your girl. Like, the other guy doesn't matter. Your girl can take care of that guy if she chooses to, but your job is to take care of your girl. So just saying that, like, this whole scene, I just really did not like it. And as I said, maybe teenagers like that, you can discuss it. It was just not nice to read for me. I think these are like the things I felt like most uncomfortable with. I was quite shocked that Naomi died, to be honest. Like, I did not see that coming, and she didn't either. So that's kind of a thing. I still don't really think it was like necessary for the plot. Like, it was just like something to shock you, but yeah, the whole like, oh, he's like hurting people I love, like, you could have gotten that across without him like literally going to Canada to do it. Like, that just didn't make like a whole lot of sense to me, but you know, it was quite a shocking moment. I think the book like definitely peaked in that first chapter though, when we first see what Corey did, and it is like, yeah, just so hard to understand. Like, you can definitely see something was like very wrong, but you don't yet understand any of it. And so I think that was like, yeah, just such a powerful moment in the story. And so I would recommend, I should have said that in the other part, like, do not read the synopsis of the book, because that spoils it. The whole like relationship with like Miles, I am kind of happy that this got reset because of how the ending works. I also thought that, like, this is what I was talking about when I said, like, it should cost the character something, because, like, he died basically, and very dramatically, and trying to save Angela. And so, yeah, him just being, like, kind of reset, and then they can, like, figure things out without, like, everything going so terribly wrong. It made it like so easy, kind of. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I thought it was interesting, him with a bow. That was like a nice touch, kind of like. I had fun with that idea, and especially that the baka couldn't corrupt the bow was like a fun little twist at the end there. As I said, really enjoyed like the inspiration of this, the way that the gods and the ancestors were brought into this, into the solution of this. I really liked the way that Marie and Angela had this connection throughout the book. I still don't love the way that like she was closed and then she opened up to it. Like, that didn't make like a ton of sense to me. Like, why was Corey so open to it and she wasn't, even when the ring was gone and all of that. So it was a good book. I had a good time with it. I definitely had times when I just didn't want to stop reading. I also had times when I just had to stop reading to like take a second. So it definitely does what it sets out to do. It's very successful in that. I would definitely recommend it. And I would love to hear what you thought if you read the book. So let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like or a nice comment otherwise. I always appreciate those. And as I said in the spoiler part right now, but I want to repeat it for everyone just once, do not read the synopsis of the book because it spoils like one of the most powerful moments in the book. Just go and read it. Do not read the back of the book. You don't need to know that. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!